Netflix has given us an 8-episode unprecedented look at the Minnesota Vikings quarterback. So let's dive in and see what we can actually learn about this guy. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Luke Braun, and let's find some joy today. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is an audio listening platform like SiriusXM or wherever you get podcasts. Also YouTube and Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. And a special shout out to those of you who do listen to this show every single day. My hashtag everydayers. Love you guys. Today on the show, it is going to count toward the Everyman Series. But look, we got to talk about the quarterback documentary, the Netflix documentary. The 8-episode series finally released on Netflix. And for those of you who haven't watched it, I'm going to talk about stuff that happens in it. So if that matters to you, maybe come back to this one later. But I think it's worth taking a look from a We're All Vikings fans perspective and what does this mean for the team? What do we learn about Kirk Cousins, right? The Everyman Series is every single man, and I do tend to gravitate toward the guys that you might not know as much about, but every man includes Kirk. So this will kind of be his version of it, his actual story, going to Michigan State, getting drafted behind RG3, then he gets hurt, and then kind of making his career. Like, everybody knows that. But I think this series gave you a look at who Kirk truly is, and I think the access that it gives you is a little bit more brutally honest than what you will often get in something like, in media, press conferences for sure, but even in stuff like NFL film segments or mic'd up segments where everybody's on their best behavior, or even Hard Knocks and stuff like that. I think over the course of a season, you can feel it you can feel him let his hair down a little bit and open up, I guess. And even without that, it is the thesis of the show. And by the way, I'm not going to talk at all about the Mariota and Mahomes parts of the show. But the thesis of the show is, look how hard it is to be a quarterback. Look at how much goes into being a quarterback. To have a whole episode dedicated to how hard it is to memorize the play calls, and an episode dedicated to how much it hurts to play quarterback, like physically, the pain that you go through, the hits that you take, the injuries that you have to overcome. It's ever present, but they have a whole segment dedicated to, like, it is this much to get, like, it's bad to get hit. And these guys all tough out some level of pain that you can't even imagine. And it even starts with this sort of forward almost kind of thing, this cold open little monologue from Peyton Manning himself, who produced this thing, basically telling you, like, this is, like, look how hard it is. And the pain in particular stands out to me when I watched this. The Bills game in particular, this goes over the Viking season. It's not 100% in order, but they do the Washington game and then the Bills game. And in the Washington game, Kirk takes this absolutely brutal hit. The one he had to actually come out of the game. He got the wind knocked out of him, and he takes this absolutely brutal hit. And he has taken some hits already. He led the league in hits, I believe. So he got the crap beat out of him in 2022. And it hurts. There's all of this effort that he goes through to try and manage this rib injury, this core injury, whatever it is, bringing in chiropractors to work it, massage people to work it, basically spending all of his time at home, like having people like work on his body and get it into shape in an incredibly excruciating and grueling process. And there's this moment where he's talking to like a coach or a trainer or someone, and he said, they're like, "Hey, are you going to be okay to play?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be okay to play, but I'm not going to be okay if it gets hit again. Like it'll be all right, but if it gets aggravated again, then I might be in trouble." Cut to Bill's game, he's getting smoked. And forgive me if I forget some details too, because I actually watched it a little while ago, but he's I think this was the Bills game where he throws like a drive ends and he's in just like immense pain, right? And he can't even think straight. Adam Thielen goes over just trying to like talk to him about a route or some play or something like that. And he's like, I'm sorry, I cannot, I'm in so much pain right now. I can't even talk to you. And there's a line that I know everybody's going to run wild with, which is, hey, I'm tired of getting hit on every time. I'm tired of getting hit every time. Like he's genuinely pissed and frustrated with the amount of violence that he is subjected to. And again, like that leads the league. Like he's kind of got a point there. I think it's very interesting in light of the Vikings offseason in which they brought back the entire OL room, starters and backups, and offered no significant competition for any of those people. They brought in like some undrafted guys, but they did not give any significant competition. Like that is the same group of people that had your quarterback like all that mad. I think that's interesting. But I think this changes the way I look at the Bills game a little bit. And that Bills game always felt like, man, what a moment for Kirk Cousins. But now it feels like a little something more, like a legacy moment, because he was in so much pain he couldn't think straight. And then he went and dropped a fourth quarter and overtime that's like some of the best play he's ever had in his career. The 4th and 18, that was insane, and some of that's just throwing the thing up. But if you look at where that pass was, it kind of was where it needed to be. He put together something absolutely glorious in mind-numbing pain. And we talk about toughness a lot. We were just talking about this on Minnesota Football Party. On the Monday episode of Minnesota Football Party, we were talking about Kirk Cousins and his longevity and how he never misses a game and like the value of that and why that is and stuff like that. And how, injury luck is luck. There's this element of luck. It doesn't matter how you prepare or how tough you are or what mentality you have. If you get your foot stepped on and your leg twists wrong and you blow an ACL, I'm sorry, you are out. It doesn't matter who you are. But in this series with Kirk, and there's the like Mahomes play through the ankle thing too, you can kind of see, I don't think every quarterback plays the end of that Bills game with what Kirk was going through. And far be like, I cannot relate to this experience, right? I didn't play. I don't know what the pain is like, but I gotta think that's pretty rare. And I don't know if everyone stays in there. And I think it's worth appreciating that. But it's also worth, again, noting that the Vikings seem to have not really taken that whole our quarterback gets hit the most in the league thing and like done anything about it, unless you count like Josh Oliver. But he's more of a run game thing, at least if you ask me. So that's an interesting, I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll change the way they do protections or something like that. And maybe we'll have a really interesting conversation in October going, wow, this is what they did. How are they protecting Kirk? But this is the same group of guys. And you're just kind of hoping that like Ed Ingram gets better for Kirk Cousins being, as known as the guy that never comes out of the game, right? Known as the guy that doesn't, that barely ever misses a start and all that stuff. I think probably I don't want to credit that to luck as much as I have. I mean, there is always going to be a facet of luck, but like there's a toughness to that, and the preparation and all of the effort that he goes through to stay healthy is worth being reverent of. But also I'm very curious to see exactly how things go down if Cousins gets beat up a lot again, because he was pissed. And I don't think that that's a problem. You get pissed a little bit. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Again, this is a very candid at football. And I think the sort of drama tabloid coverage that you get in a lot of NFL places, it's very easy to be led astray by something like this. And I want to sort of at least muse on why. Before I do that, however, it is time for eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. This is eBay Motors partnering up with Locked On Fantasy Football and Vinny Iyer, who hosts Locked On Fantasy Football, to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, and we're going to do this all season long. So from right now, when you're prepping for the draft, all the way to into season, when you're thinking waiver wire or all that stuff, we will have some eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And right now we're talking about 1-1s, right? We're just getting into redrafts. We're at the beginning of all this. So one option for the 1 overall pick, first overall, how about Christian McCaffrey, 49ers running back? He's a guaranteed fit. A healthy McCaffrey is guaranteed to see well over 300 touches again in his first season in San Francisco, and he's the centerpiece of the Vikings of the 49ers explosive run game. We've been talking all like the last 3 weeks about how cool that 49ers run game is, and McCaffrey, for all the skill that he has, gets to be at the helm of it. Should be a smooth ride to another year of big numbers. Vinny Iyer of Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy football championship, and eBay Motors knows that championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle are right at your fingertips. No matter what your car needs, you can find it. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure that it is the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what parts you need and for your vehicle and the first time around. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little bit of fixing up. Because now you'll know you're always set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Moving on with this review episode. I'm doing a review of the Netflix's Quarterback series here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. There's a couple of things that are really interesting to me in the way that Kirk Cousins' mood seeps into the game. There's all kinds of great little tidbits of moments. There's the QB sneak at the end of the Bills game, at the end of regulation, that didn't get in the 4th and inches. It was a QB sneak. That was actually like a whole play calling kerfuffle where he didn't get the play call, so he just made a call. Like, it was really cool stuff. There's also in that same game, you might remember a really, really bad interception that he threw, where he just threw it to the wrong guy. He just, like, corner of his eye, thought it was Jefferson, and it was actually a defender. Completely inexcusable. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It's insane. And when he lets it go, you can hear, no. Like, it's so great. It's worth watching the series just for his, like, no, as he lets that one go. And I think the holistic approach, where it's really the whole season and it's not just one moment, and you can binge this whole thing at once. You can sort of see how these moments are part of a greater whole. I think it can help you to get out of that, right? Like, that interception was horrible, but it did not define that game. If anything, because of all the pain that he was in the game that he put out, like, at the end, overcoming that and coming back and making the win and all that stuff, that, if anything, that is what I think that game should be remembered for him. But you can see the mood kind of seeping in a lot of those ways. In that Bills game, he's coming off the Washington game and he's in all that pain, and you can see it. I mean, it affects him physically as much as it's going to. There's not much you can do about that, or he's at least doing as much as he can. But also, there's just this frustration that comes with he at the first half of the Colts game. I remember thinking, like, man, this dude is mad. Like, he did not enjoy that game. Like, that comeback was incredible and he was happy to have it, but it felt like he did not enjoy that game. And yeah, sure, man, you fall behind 33-0 because you get a punt blocked and your receiver runs the wrong way. He was so mad about that. Like, yeah, I'd be frustrated too. And how the mood is, like, not always hunky-dory. A couple of my favorite moments from it are the Washington game, going back to the Washington game, where he said on the podium, like, oh, I'm super excited to go back and blah, blah, blah. And he like said all the right things, but I kind of never really bought it. I was like, I don't know, man, you might have a little bit of something to prove, and that's okay. They go really in depth on his thoughts on that and how excited he is to see it. And really for him, that is a place, like, Washington, D.C. is like where his family started and where he sort of set his roots the first time. And it's this really important city for him. So just returning and playing a game there at all, like, he doesn't care at all about the Commanders or Snyder or any of that. Like, he's not thinking about that at all. For him, it's more, I am going back to this field, this stadium, this city where we lived for so long, where this was home. And that's where the meaning of the game comes. And he plays that game. I still maintain that was his best game of the season. Um, but I think Kirk has an uncanny ability, and they even talk about this. He has this uncanny ability to sort of live in his own world and be unaware of the context of everything. Like he didn't know, he didn't even know that they had made the biggest comeback in NFL history in the Colts game. He had no idea. Like he's just tunnel vision, right? That's kind of his strength and his weakness is that he can really laser focus on something and block out everything else for better or worse. And so while we were all, in the week leading up to that Washington game, we were all talking about, revenge game, blah, blah, blah. He's finally going back to play in front of those Washington fans. It's not a thought he had at all. I don't know. Interesting juxtaposition. And then I think my favorite part is of the whole series comes after the playoff game, after losing the playoff game. There was like this shock in that locker room that you can remember all the reporters were talking about, that there was this feeling that like, this is incomplete. This is not how it was supposed to end. This team was so special. And we know that a lot of it's going to get scattered to the wind, which it has now. There was this sort of, this surreal out of body experience the whole team was having. And I think it comes off really clearly in one of the only times, as much as this show is candid, and I'll talk about that in a sec, as much as this show, doesn't pull its punches, you can still kind of tell, like, they all know cameras are on them, right? They all know that they're mic'd up, and so they know what to say, what not to say, and all that. And you can tell that they're holding a little bit of that personality back, just in case something gets taken out of context. It's an inevitability when you put a camera on a professional athlete. They've all been coached so hard to hold this kind of thing back. And I think maybe the only moment in the whole series where it really felt like they forgot a camera was in the car ride home after that playoff game. Just Kirk and Julie Cousins were just talking about it. And maybe they got prompted, hey, can you just like talk about how you feel real quick for the camera? But it really felt like a true, real conversation. And Kirk's talking about the plays he would have had back and how it just doesn't feel like it should be over yet. And, the shock and just disappointment of it all, how much it hurts to lose in the playoffs. And I mean, look, you have Mariota who doesn't make the playoffs. You have Patrick Mahomes who doesn't lose in the playoffs. This is the only time in the show where you get this like really truly disappointing end to a season where there is this singular moment where you go, bam, that's where the season ended. Like you don't really have that for the Falcons, right? Because they didn't make the playoffs. For the Vikings, that 4th and 8 to TJ Hawkinson, that was it. That's the end. That's the moment, right? That's the infamous moment. You don't get that in either of the other two stories. And I think it gives Cousins' story a better like narrative balance. This is not Vikings analysis. This is story analysis. But like with Cousins, there is a true conflict the entire time where he's overcoming pain and he's overcoming outside criticism, and he's overcoming various situations that maybe he has varying degrees of blame for, but he's overcoming deficits and stuff like that. And there's this sense of him fighting this uphill battle and trudging through the mud over and over and over and over again, only for it to just sort of end on a whimper. And this sort of tragedy to it that's really felt palpably in the car that I really appreciated from like a storytelling perspective. And I don't think it came through in the other two stories as well. It's like a more coherent arc, I guess, to it. And something that you find with these stories that I find when I'm doing like the Everyman series or when I'm working on some other stuff in my other professional career, that you will find that some of the most powerful stories do not follow the traditional structure with happy endings. Patrick Mahomes' story follows a fairly traditional structure. You have your setup, you have a lot of rise, you have climactic challenges, the ankle injury and all that stuff, the moment where you think maybe he's not going to come back, and then suddenly he does and it's triumphant and they win and go, happy Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. With Cousins, it doesn't follow that because it doesn't have a happy ending. The all is lost moment is that all is lost. And now you just have to deal with that. And the lesson of the story is a little bit more about, hey, sometimes you have to, like, stuff has to suck and you have to deal with it. How do you respond? And I guess that's what we find out in 2023, right? There's a couple more things that I want to get to with this episode of Locked On Vikings, talking about the Netflix show and Kirk Cousins in general. So let's keep her going. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. My hashtag every day or sound off if you can. Moving on here, talking more about the Netflix quarterback series featuring 3 quarterbacks, including Kirk Cousins, an in-depth look at Kirk Cousins' 2022 season with the Minnesota Vikings. Honestly, it's worth watching just for the Bills and Colts game, just because reliving those games is so fun, right? But one of the things that really stuck out to me was the candor of the whole thing. There's this moment that you could feel like would never get out without a piece like this. It's, I believe, the Lions game, the Week 3 Lions game. And the Vikings are on the goal line. This is the touchdown to Johnny Munt, I believe, his first ever touchdown. And you get into the huddle, and they're talking about this is the episode that's talking about how hard it is to get all the play calls down. And Kirk Cousins actually forgets. He is calling the play, and he's saying all the words, and then he says, "Why, whatever." The Y is the tight end, and he forgets the word for the route the tight end is supposed to run. It turns out okay, because the play that he is calling will only ever have the tight end do one thing. Like, it's a very specialized play. So Johnny Munt knew what he was supposed to do just by like context anyways, and it turned out fine, and ends up being a touchdown. But he's like, blah, 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 blah. Why, whatever. This is kind of funny moment, this harmless thing. And I think if you really wanted to, you could take that like super far out of context and turn it into this whole thing where can Kirk Cousins like make the play calls or not. But I think there is a media literacy required when you get pieces like this that have a little bit more candor to them like that. I think we can all agree that can Kirk Cousins call plays in the huddle is not a concern that anyone seriously shares. He just forgot a word once, and it was a touchdown play anyways. Who cares? It's a hard thing to do, and he messed it up once. Like, who cares? And I think that same framework of logic can be applied to some of the other stuff. There are some, I won't even call them heated, but, impassioned exchanges on the sideline, especially in moments where the Vikings are losing, frustrated moments. And, you see a frustrated moment on the sideline. Like, I think back to a few years ago, the Vikings, it was 2018, last game of the season. They had a win and they lost to the Bears, and they had that like infamous sideline blow up spat with Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen. And I think later there was like a mic'd up segment, and it was just, they were kind of arguing about how long Thielen was taking to run his routes and route timing and stuff. And it was actually probably a good discussion thing to iron out on the sideline kind of in the moment there. But because it was a little bit less, it wasn't perfectly professional, everybody went wild with it. Or I think the funniest one is the last year of Mike Zimmer, the like field goal blow up thing with the Kirk Cousins running up to Mike Zimmer and saying like, "You like that?" after the a field goal to beat the Lions at the end of the game. And they like celebrated together, and they like kind of pushed each other, like what happens like every time, like all the time. And people still are convinced to their last breath that was an actual physical assault. Like that was a fight that was caught on the Fox cameras. It's so funny how hard people will try to like manufacture the drama. And in reality, it's like you can tell it comes from people who have not competed or have not been around competition. Because when you are around like true hard competition, like what you would find in professional football, but you can find this kind of thing in other contexts. But when you're around that true like team competition, passionate competition, if things are going poorly and nobody's pissed off and people aren't biting each other's heads off, honestly, like I'm worried. I'm like, do we care enough? I was not long ago in a similar situation. I won't give you the details, but not long ago was in a similar situation where things were going poorly and people were getting angry at each other, and that was like the accountability that people needed, right? and you feel like a team in that moment. I forget the exact context, but there is a moment where Cousins is, I think it's in the Colts game, in the first half of the Colts game when things are going super poorly. And Cousins is furious in this game, especially after Jalen Reagor like runs the wrong route and gets the thing picked off. And he's like super pissed off. There's this moment with Kirk and Kevin O'Connell. I won't give you the details. I won't spoil the details, but suffice to say, it's not the most polite exchange, right? And I think we should not expect it to be, I guess is what I'm getting at. When you're on the sideline in an NFL context with adrenaline pumping and the stakes are high and emotions run high and all that stuff, it is not necessarily a symptom of some underlying resentment if you get a little heated in talking about, hey, this play didn't work and here's why, or you should have done this or you should have done that. That's just part of the communication process. It's human. It's normal. And I think we have really weird expectations for athletes. I was musing on this a lot. I know there's a lot going on with like the Timberwolves right now with Karl Anthony Towns, and he keeps saying like, I don't know, quotes that feel pretty normal to me, but everyone's really mad. And it's like, I guess people don't like his quotes and people don't like stuff that people say. And I think we hold athletes to this really weird standard about how they're supposed to behave. In that they're supposed to be these like super like wind up toy robots in every situation. I mean, you'll have a miscommunication of some sort, like a busted coverage, right? And let's say it's not clear whose fault it was, and everybody's really mad because you just gave up a big touchdown. Two people whose fault it could have been need to get there and like talk to each other. And I feel like we expect that to be like, well, I was thinking about this. What were you thinking, sir? I yield the floor for debate. And what were you thinking? Like it feels like it's supposed to be this like congressional committee with all the decorum that entails. And no, they're going to yell at each other. They're people and they're mad. Like they're going to yell at each other. It happens. It doesn't mean that they hate each other. And I think that if you can go into something like this with that mentality, then I think you'll be able to enjoy it a little bit more. But I guess I warn you, if you're not going to watch the series because you're not interested in it, that's fine. And you see a bunch of headlines from it that are like, did Kirk and Cousins, did Kirk and O'Connell hate each other? Know that people are just trying too hard. I'm a little worried that you're going to find that. I haven't seen anything like that. Has been long enough for people to like write up their pieces. But if you find something like that, just know that maybe you're getting sold some snake oil. And me personally, I'll only ever sell you bearded dragon oil. For more of that, you can come back to the show tomorrow. Probably continue with the Everyman series. Go watch the Netflix show, though. I think it's worth your time, if only to relive the fun of the Bills and the Colts games and some of the other tight wins that they had. It was a fun season. Go remember how fun the season was, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.